So I would like to welcome everybody to this morning's panel. My name is Nicole Quadra with San Mateo County Libraries. Gary, we can remove the slide when you get a second. So like I said, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this election panel, Count and Be Counted, the safety and importance of voting and census in the era of COVID-19. San Mateo County Libraries is committed to providing voter education and outreach this election season. There is so much uncertainty, and we really want to be a positive force for finding a way through. In addition to today's event, we have 2 ballot measure information sessions with the League of Women Voters, one October 1st at 7 p.m. and the second October 17th at 10 p.m. I'll put registration information in the chat a little later. And now I'd like to introduce our facilitator for this discussion, Petra Silton. Petra has been involved in nonprofit work for over 25 years and has spent the last 3 years developing the policy and advocacy program for nonprofits at Thrive Alliance. One of her focus areas has been increasing civic participation by working with nonprofits to help them develop effective outreach strategies. She holds a BA in International Relations from the University of Pennsylvania. And with that, I will welcome Petra.
Thank you, Nicole, so much for hosting this important discussion. I really appreciated when you came to us and said that this is something that you really feel like people would be interested in, because it's really important topics and extremely timely. I'd like to introduce myself and let you know who Thrive is, and then introduce the panelists, and then we'll jump right into our discussion. So Thrive is a trusted network of over 200 nonprofit organizations, government entities, foundations, businesses, and community leaders with a shared commitment to strengthening the nonprofit sector, thereby improving the quality of life in San Mateo. Thrive unites the voice and influence of nonprofits, helping to build their capacity, enabling effective cross-sector collaboration, and just want to emphasize, especially for this particular discussion, that we are nonpartisan. I'm thrilled to introduce our panelists. I really appreciate that they're taking their time to be here and be local experts on these important topics. So Emma Gonzalez is the director of the San Mateo County Manager's Office of Community Affairs, including the Equity and Social Justice Office. She has more than 30 years of experience working for the county. She's operated in a variety of capacities, which include community and civic engagement, community needs assessment, program redesign and development, child welfare quality improvement, and advancing racial equity. So welcome, Emma. Julia Marks is staff attorney on the Voting Rights and Census team for Asian Americans Advancing Justice, Asian Law Caucus. She provides technical assistance to community organizations regarding Census 2020 and elections operations, and engages in legal and policy advocacy around census, elections, and redistricting. She received her JD from the University of California, Berkeley School of Law. Miriam Yupanqui, Executive Director, Nuestra Casa de East Palo Alto, is building a movement to transform East Palo Alto into a place where every resident thrives. A thriving community is one where everyone has a place to call home, a living wage, and the same opportunities for success, as we see on the other side of Highway 101. Miriam is an East Palo Alto native. She received her BA from the UC Berkeley and her MPA from the University of Southern California. We also have a shadow participant that I appreciate. Sarah O'Brien from the County Elections Office is also on, and she will be answering election-specific questions if you have any. So I really want to acknowledge that this is a challenging time for all of us. There is significant national unrest, again, more protests last night. There's a lot of uneasiness around the government, translates to worries about the integrity of our census, about the integrity of our elections. So that's what brings us really to this discussion. I'd like to start with each speaker introducing themselves and talking briefly about their organizations. So Emma, would you like to start?
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Petra, and thank you everybody for inviting me here today to be part of this panel on such an important topic. You know, my office is the Office of Community Affairs out of the County Manager's office, and our role is really, we have many different roles that we play. One of them includes census, but we also do, one of our other pillars includes civic engagement, immigrant services and coordination, as well as now equity and social justice. All of them very equally important as a priority to our county and our county manager's office. The main theme and what, you know, our entire goal and continues to be, and the purpose of our office is really to better engage, to increase engagement, build awareness within our community, and as well as to bridge the gap between the residents as well as the services that the county has to offer, and providing them in a linguistic, culturally sensitive manner. We are here to ensure that those services are getting into the communities most in need, and that there's inclusiveness, equal access, as well as language, and in the languages that are needed. So we've learned a lot through census, and I think we'll be able to go through more of the discussion, but that's an overall kind of our office and our role.
Thank you, Emma. Julia.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you very much for hosting this. I'm really happy to be here and that we're putting time to this topic. So I'm from Asian Americans Advancing Justice, Asian Law Caucus, and we're the oldest legal and civil rights organization serving Asian Pacific American communities in the nation. While we were originally founded with a focus on Asian Pacific American communities, our work today also is in collaboration with other immigrant communities, low-income folks, and refugee populations. And we also serve Arab and Middle Eastern communities as well. We have a diverse set of program areas with the key the key element is that they all have a legal component. So we work on workers' rights, we work on housing rights, helping prevent evictions. We also do work around civil rights and hate violence. We work on criminal justice reform, and then also immigration. And in addition to that, we have our voting rights and census team. And the voting rights and census program we see as integral to having success in all those subject matter areas. Because if everyone's voice isn't heard in our democracy, we won't have the policies in place that are so important to housing, workers, civil rights, et cetera. So our team's goal is to make sure that all Californians have an opportunity to have a voice in the democracy. So for some folks, that will mean voting. For other folks, that'll mean participating in the census. For others, that might mean speaking up next year when we're doing redistricting and shaping the boundaries of our local government seats. So there's so many ways people can be involved in the policies that we're seeing here in California and also nationally. And our team just wants to make sure everyone has the information and opportunity that they need to engage in those processes.
Thank you, Julia. Miriam.
Nuestra Casa has been serving the East Palo Alto and Mid-Peninsula communities over the past 18 years. And we exist to uplift the voices of our most vulnerable community members in the Mid-Peninsula. And we do this through our education, leadership development, and advocacy programs. And I have the honor to lead an organization in the community where I grew up and represent individuals whose backgrounds are reflective of mine. Census and voter engagement work is particularly very important for Nuestra Casa because the outcomes will determine the resources and opportunities that get allocated to the communities that we serve. I'm very excited to be here in this panel, and I would like to thank Thrive for the opportunity and the invitation, and I look forward to talking a little bit more about our specific census and voter engagement work.
Thank you. So I want to jump right into census. We've been talking a lot about it. There's been a lot of information on the news about census. It has somehow become more politicized than ever. But let's kind of go back to the beginning. What is the significance of census and why are we even talking about it? So Emma, would you like to take that one? You're on mute.
The technologies of this, right? You know, thank you again for allowing us to be part of this, and more importantly, the impact that census brings to each one of our communities. Ensuring a complete count for San Mateo County residents in the 2020 census is essential for so many reasons. And that, you know, I also want to stress this is a priority for the County Board of Supervisors and our county manager. We all know that census is important because it's the cornerstone of our democracy. The census ensures that everyone is equally represented in their political systems, that the enumeration and appropriation process. We also know that resources are allocated fairly because of census or through the census process. Census counts are used to make important community decisions, including where to build our homes, parks, schools, and roads, and where to offer healthcare, childcare, transportation, child welfare services, social service programs, as well as funding and responding to emergency services such as the pandemic that we're under now. So much is driven from the census data, including the resources that are needed and so much deserved within our communities. The one thing that's unique about the census is that this is the only opportunity, regardless of citizenship status, that every citizen, every resident in our county can participate. It's the most inclusive process available. So this is where the marginalized have a voice, your community has a voice, your leaders, every single person has a voice at the table. And we make sure that everyone is counted.
Thank you, Emma. So it sounds like the census is really important for the county. It's really important for planning. It's really important for funding. It's important for representation. It would seem like it's a no-brainer that everybody would just fill it out. Miriam, do you want to talk a little bit about how this lands in your community and what kind of barriers you're seeing?
Nuestra Casa offers programming in the East Palo Alto, North Fair Oaks, and Bellhaven communities. And as you may already know, these communities are composed of individuals from multi-ethnic backgrounds, composed of the Latino, African American, and Pacific Islander communities. And even before the pandemic, there was a lot of hesitation, particularly from the immigrant population, in accessing public services. They were very concerned that their data could potentially be used down the road. When it comes to census, our community members know that this is driven by a government agency, and they are very concerned that there could potentially be a data breach or that data could potentially be used for deportation purposes down the road. At Nuestra Casa, we work with our community members to let them know that this is not the case. And for that, we use a promotora team and community outreach members that look like the individuals that we represent to dispel any myths and to let them know that they can trust this process. Another barrier that we are also encountering is concerning the individual's living situation. Many of our families live in households where 2 to 3 families are sharing a home, and in some cases there are illegal housing conversions. So they worry that their data could potentially be used by the city or the county to dismantle any of these housing situations. And there's true fears in the community. So through the support from various foundations in the San Mateo County, Nuestra Casa has been knocking doors in East Palo Alto and the Bellhaven communities over the past several months to work with our community members and to really let them know that they should be accounted for.
Thank you. Julia, so you're hearing that there are a lot of fears around data and how this data is being used. Can you talk kind of on a higher level, of a policy level, of what the safeguards are?
Yeah, I'm happy to. And I just want to say to Miriam, it's so important you're doing all that great in-person outreach and contact and conversations, because it can be very hard to get the message across, and we all know how important it is to have people out in the community. So thank you for that. So there are a number of laws in place that do help ensure folks that their data won't be used against them and won't be shared out with even other government agencies once they respond to the census. So the Census Bureau is its own agency, and it's not allowed to share your census response with any other federal government agencies, or with states, or with local governments, or with individuals. So that means the Census Bureau cannot give information about an individual, whether that's their name and address or their name and related family members. They cannot give any of that type of information to other folks. So like ICE won't get to see it. They can't send it over to the IRS. They can't send it to your city council. It's confidential. So that's in the law. And that law has been on the books for a long time and has been strengthened at various points over the last century. And people who work for the Bureau take these confidentiality laws very seriously, in part because it's in the Bureau culture, but also because there are pretty severe criminal penalties for Bureau employees if they wrongfully share out any individual's information. In addition to the restriction on individuals within the Bureau sharing it out, the Bureau as a whole takes a lot of additional steps on the statistics side of things to make sure that even the most sophisticated algorithms wouldn't be able to process the data or sift through larger data files to find out any information on individuals. So there are a number of protections in place. And then we do recognize some folks don't necessarily trust the legal framework, and we understand that. These are scary and difficult times. So it's always important in our conversations to uplift the strong benefits of census participation and outline those protections that are in place, and then let folks make their own decision about how to weigh those pieces. But we do like to highlight that there are many civil rights attorneys who are very, very closely monitoring and watching every action the Bureau has taken. And while this is a highly politicized census, so that's extra true right now, we've also seen it in the past. Attorneys watch over what kinds of data requests are being submitted to the Bureau, what is the Bureau doing, and the Bureau can only share out aggregated data, which means data that can't be linked to any person, and people are monitoring to make sure that that's truly the case. Yeah.
Thank you. And so the census is over on September 30th. So Emma, what can we do between now and September 30th? What message do you want to leave us with?
Thank you for asking. It's 6 days. And really, we have 6 days. I say, for those of you that have completed your census, thank you. For those of you that might have forgotten and it's left sitting in, maybe we just forgot to complete it, I urge you to complete it, because these next 6 days will make the difference for the next 10 years. It really is. It will impact the next 10 years of services, funding that are so much deserved in our communities. This is what we deserve. And I really want to leave that with, we don't want one more school being closed. We don't want one more hospital closure. We want to have equal access into the communities that most deserve it. And that is every single one of our communities. But to have that, we need to have the most accurate count possible. I'd like to leave you with it. We have approximately 760,000 residents in our county. Now let's imagine 10% of our community isn't counted. The impact is it really comes out to, and I always have to look at my math here, it is $76 million a year for the next 10 years that would go lost to our community. That we can't allow that to happen. In some communities, I will say, I will give you a quick story. In Pescadero, in 2010, it showed that there was less than, about 2,500 residents that lived there. But in fact, there were over 5,000. That's an undercount of 50%. We can't have these errors continue, but we need your help. We need everyone's help to ensure that we have the most accurate count. That means going out, asking a friend, have you completed it? Talking to your neighbors, sending a social media, and just maybe walking with your neighbor to complete it. That will, and the work that Miriam, along with many of our community-based organizations, are doing now. We rely so heavily on our trusted messengers, and that's every single one of you that are listening here today, and our community-based organizations who are on the front line, really doing the grassroots conversation, education, and information. But the fight isn't over, people. I'll tell you, we are not finishing. Although the census is completed tentatively 1 month ahead of schedule, we will continue. We are committed on the behalf of the county and our community-based organizations. We are committed to the very end. This is the best return on our investment because our residents count. Our residents is where we believe and are committed to making sure the resources are there. So I leave you with that. Again, I encourage you, if you haven't completed it, to complete it. You can go online. You can do it through the phone, or if you still have your application, turn it in, but it must be postmarked by September 30th. But it's not too late, and everyone makes a difference. And again, regardless of citizenship status, this is the most inclusive process where we have equal opportunities to be a part of. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Emma, for that message of empowerment and for your partnership with the community-based organizations, with Julia and Miriam and with us. We really appreciate and acknowledge how much energy, time, money, everything that the county has put into making this a really fair process and to really be able to empower our entire community. So thank you for that. I'm going to move on to elections. I'm going to take this opportunity to share my screen for just a second and do a very quick refresher on voting, because there have been some changes based on the governor's orders because of COVID-19. There's also been some updates, just as there are with every election. So I just want to give you guys a quick checklist, what everybody should be doing, some fast facts. So everybody should check their registration or re-register. It's just a good idea always to do because your signature needs to match for mail-in ballots. And if you signed it first when you were 16 and now you're 45, it might look different. You can go to smcvote.org for pretty much all of this information. You can also go directly to the California website. There are two easy ways to vote. One is to vote at home. Everybody who is a registered voter, if you've registered by October 19th, you will automatically receive a ballot in the mail. You do not need to do anything. It will come in your mailbox. You open it up, make your choices, put it back in the envelope, which already has postage paid. Make sure to sign the outside of your envelope. And then you can return it either by sticking it in a mailbox or dropping it in an official ballot drop box, or going to any vote center. If you want to vote in person, you can go to any vote center in the county. You don't have to go to the closest one, and there'll be 45 throughout the county. All of them are going to be open the Saturday, the Sunday, and the Monday and the Tuesday of election week. So you do not need to wait until election day. A lot of people will be at vote centers on election day. The other thing that's great about vote centers is if you forgot to register to vote before October 19th, you can register to vote and vote at the same time on any of those days. And there are 3 vote centers, by the way, that are open all the way starting on October 5th, which is very soon. You can get a replacement ballot, you can get language assistance, you can get help if you need accessible voting machines. So vote centers are really fantastic places where you can do a lot. After you voted, if you're interested in tracking your ballot, there is now a statewide way to track your ballot, so you will know where your ballot is in the process, when it's been counted. The election results, and this is very important, will not come on election night. Because of the way that mail-in ballots are counted, and because they need to be postmarked by election day, they don't need to be in the hands of the election office by election day, results aren't certified until 30 days later. There have been times in San Mateo County where people actually started acting in an official capacity thinking they had won the election, and then it turns out that they didn't. There are a lot of elections that are very close, and we might not know the results for several weeks. So please be patient, tell your friends to be patient. This is going to be a long process, not just an election day and staying up late at night waiting to hear what the results are. Voting is safe and secure. There are a lot of COVID protocols at all of the vote centers. There's more information again at smcvotes.org about all of the different protocols, but the elections office has really gone above and beyond, making sure that everything is as safe as possible and following all of the appropriate protocols. So if you are going to a vote center, bring your mask, and you can get all of those great services there. And don't forget, this is a presidential election year, so there will be a lot of people voting. So it's a great idea to vote early. Not often, just early. Okay. We're happy to answer specific questions about that. I do also want to just talk briefly about the number of people voting. Is that we have areas with very high voter turnout, but we also have various areas with very low voter turnout. We really think that the voting is a great way to increase representation. And just as an example, our county is about 40% white, but in our elected offices, both on the city level and the county level, it's about 70% white. So the more people who vote, the more our elected representatives are more likely to look like the people who actually live in our community. So I'm going to go to Miriam to talk about what are some of the barriers for people participating in the elections.
When it comes to voting, there is less fear, but more hesitation from our community members. Many community members are frustrated with the decisions that are made at the federal level. And for that reason, they are discouraged to vote. And I would also say that many of our families see elections tied exclusively to electing the next president. However, at Nuestra Casa, we work closely with our community members to let them know that this is not the case, that their voting matters and there's implications at the local and state level as well, despite who gets elected as a president. Another challenge that we are encountering is that the voting ballots are very complex, even for individuals who have a college degree or a master's degree. And our community members are at a higher disadvantage because many of them have limited English proficiencies, and many of them also have under a high school degree. And I can give an example. At Nuestra Casa, we run ESL programs. And last year, we had a student who did not have a formal education in his native country and came to the United States with an eagerness to learn English. And the way he actually learned how to write was by tracing letters on sand and dirt in his home country. So we're definitely dealing with individuals who have limited literacy proficiencies, and our role is to work with them closely. And when it comes to The census, we helped individuals complete the form over the phone or in person. And when it comes to voting, we're really excited about the partnerships with Thrive and the Silicon Valley Community Foundation and other organizations who are going to help us deliver and create materials that are culturally and linguistically competent for our community members.
Thank you. So some of the hesitations that Miriam was talking about, Julia, I'm hoping you can address some of them. Talking about maybe reliability of vote by mail and some of the narratives that we're hearing kind of on a national scale that are making people hesitant and scared.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first I want to highlight that for voters who are limited English proficient, there are really strong laws in place at the federal and state level to make sure that they have the opportunity to participate fully in the election. So voters can receive language assistance by mail, and that's something that not everyone knows about. But in this election, where some folks might not feel comfortable going to the polls because of health concerns, we really want to get the word out that they can sign up in advance to have a translated ballot sent to them. So that's always true if you live in San Mateo and you read Chinese or Spanish. And then there are some other languages where other materials like a reference document are available. And those vary a little bit based on where you live within the county. But folks who have language barriers who want to receive help by mail should call the county elections office to ask for that, because that's something they may be entitled to. So I just wanted to flag that as one of the kind of preliminary things that might make the vote by mail system more accessible to more voters. But in addition to the language barrier, we've been hearing a lot of folks are just concerned about whether the system's going to work. There are a lot of news stories out there about delays in the US postal system. There are also stories out there that provide a false narrative that vote by mail leads to fraud. That is not the case. And so I wanted to address those issues. So first of all, vote by mail has been used widely for many years. Multiple states actually do automatic all vote by mail to all voters and have done that for at least a decade. And then here in San Mateo and in some other counties in California, you all transitioned to a predominantly vote by mail system back in 2018. So hopefully, as that system has been in place for a couple election cycles, voters are starting to see that it works okay. And with vote by mail happening in so many places, we still have not seen rampant fraud happening through the transition to vote by mail. So it's very important if articles or social media is circulating saying that vote by mail is unreliable or fraudulent, that we combat that narrative by identifying the fact that that narrative is being used to undermine confidence in our election system, and it's a cynical strategic choice to try to make people less inclined to vote or less trusting of the voting process, and then say that the truth is that studies have not found that this is a system that creates opportunities for fraud. So that's an important part of our conversations and kind of something to watch for on social media and other channels where you might be active and in conversation about voting. I also wanted to highlight, if folks are worried that their specific ballot isn't going to make it in, Petra mentioned the ballot tracking system. So any voter in California can sign up for something called Ballot Tracks. And you can sign up now, you can sign up when you register. And what it means is that the county will notify the ballot track system, which can notify you. You can get text messages. You can decide how you want to find out about your ballot. And it'll notify you when your ballot goes out. It'll notify you when USPS thinks the ballot will be arriving at your home. When you send it back, it'll notify that it's back in the system. And then when it's actually counted, it'll let you know that it was counted. Or if there's an issue and it's not counted, it'll let you know that. So signing up for ballot tracks can provide peace of mind to voters who aren't as confident about the vote by mail concept. And then another key piece of it, in California, we're very lucky because even with Postal Service delays, our system has built a lot of time into our voting calendar. So counties will start mailing out ballots on October 5th. So that's almost a full month before Election Day. And then once you get your ballot, if you turn it in immediately, that's great. If you don't want to mail it back, you don't have to. You can go to a drop box. Or if you don't make it to a drop box, you can go to the nearest vote center. That'll be the 45 vote centers that'll be opening starting on October 31st. So you have multiple options for how to return your ballot. And then even if you do opt to mail it in California, as long as your ballot is postmarked by Election Day or on Election Day, there's actually a 17-day window before which it has to reach the elections office. So we definitely don't recommend waiting for Election Day to put your ballot in the mail. But if you end up choosing to do that, there's still a couple weeks built into the calendar when it can make its way to the elections office and still be processed in time.
There are a couple things I actually want to add because there are questions that have come up. One is that mail-in ballots don't typically favor one party over another. So although there's a lot of national rhetoric about that, studies have shown that it doesn't make a difference in the outcome. And I think that's a really important thing to say to people when people hear, when people try to make this a partisan issue. It's not. Voting by mail is safe. San Mateo County has been doing this for a long time. We're one of the pioneers, and it's been a very successful program. The other thing is that there are three main reasons why ballots get rejected. One is that people forget to sign it. One is that the signatures don't match. And the other one is just plain old that it's late. So I think everybody knows how to deal with it being late. Mail it by Election Day. But as far as signatures not matching or not having a signature, our elections office will reach out to you if your signature doesn't match or if you forgot to sign. And as long as you fix it within those 17 days, your vote will be counted. So it's terrific that they do that, and know they do that, please. We have a whole bunch of questions in the chat, which I think are starting to be answered, but we will get to them at the end, any ones that aren't answered by our friends at the election department. Miriam, do you want to talk about why it's important for your community to have a voice, and how you talk to them about the power of their voice in some of the elections that have been very close in East Palo Alto?
It is very important for our community members to have a voice to ensure accurate representation. In East Palo Alto, a significant population is the Pacific Islander community. However, they're not fairly represented in elected positions, and that's an area that, as a whole, our community can work in. At Nuestra Casa, we work with our community members to let them know that by voting and completing the census, they're building a collective power. They are not just voting for themselves, but they are voting for their children who are under 18, for their parents or grandparents who may be undocumented. And for us, it's very important to let them know that this will have an impact in terms of the local resources that get allocated to healthcare, to education, and that if we have the appropriate funding, our communities will be more equipped to thrive.
Thank you. Julia, do you want to talk a little bit more? I know I mentioned it already about what happens the day after the elections. Can you talk a little bit more about kind of the process and what you are anticipating on November 4th?
Yeah, and thank you for flagging this issue, Petra. I think people get so excited about Election Day, as they should, that we all really want to see the results the day of. But unfortunately, that's not something that will happen. And the reasons for that are actually really good reasons. So the county can do kind of a preliminary tally on Election Day, but there's so many ballots that still may not yet have been counted and might not be reflected or will not be reflected in those preliminary numbers. And so there's about a month of time where the county needs to go through and process any additional ballots. A variety of reasons, there might still be ballots after Election Day that need to be processed. So one is obviously any vote by mail ballot that has been mailed in close to or on Election Day will take a few days to reach the elections office. And once it's received, then it can lawfully be counted, right, into the tally, but that'll take a little bit of time. So the late mailed ballots won't be reflected in the early numbers. And then additionally, there can be kind of technical issues with ballots. As you mentioned, if someone has forgotten to sign their envelope when voting by mail, the county will reach out to them and give them the opportunity to fix that and send in their signature and confirm that it's their ballot. Sometimes the ballot gets like damaged, physically damaged in some way where it can't go through the scanning machine. And so the office needs to clean that up and get it nicely scanned. So there are just some processing pieces that take a little bit of time. But then additionally, there are really important auditing things that will happen. So the county is extremely careful, and county folks are on the call who can chime in as well, to make sure everything on Election Day went right. All the ballots are accounted for, double check the polls, make sure no one inadvertently voted twice. There are a bunch of systems that they go through over the few weeks following the election, in addition to counting those extra ballots or kind of later sent ballots, just to make sure that the numbers are correct, because we all take this process very seriously and want to ensure that it's all accurate and safe and fair.
Thank you. Emma, I was wondering if you could just give us a quick overview of where the county is on their COVID status, because I know that although elections isn't your purview, people are going to want to feel comfortable leaving the house, and what the kind of official status is right now with our COVID protocols in the county.
So those remain the same under the public health, regardless of where you're at, what city. It really is wear a mask, maintain 6 foot social distance, and be respectful of that distance, wash your hands. And so when entering in any public space, it is under the public safety orders that you wear a mask and wear a face covering, and maintain those 6 foot social distancing. I mean, and that is the best advice, the one healthcare guidelines that we are continuing to promote to slow the spread. There is no mystery that mask saves lives. Wearing a mask saves lives. And so that's our message. And really, for us to slow the spread, to change into tiers. Now we went into the red tier, and hopefully we can, in 3 weeks and a month, we can go down to the next tier. But we need to really slow the spread and to maintain the safety of others around us and ourselves and our loved ones. It is wearing that mask and maintaining that 6 foot social distance. So for us to continue to be successful in these during voting and at the registration, at the sites and any location, just maintain those public health guidelines is our advice, as we, and that's our educational advice that we are promoting throughout the county.
Thank you. We're very excited that we've moved down to red. We're going to hopefully continue that downward trend. So, and as Emma said, it's really just, it's not complicated. We just need to do it. And we're really hoping to slow the spread so that we can get back to a more normal lifestyle. Maybe even get the kids back to school. That would be fun for many of us. So we have some questions in the chat that I was hoping we could address. First of all, much appreciate everybody who's jumped in and answered the questions. But there are a couple that have not been answered. And one of them is probably for Julia, I think, which is if the results of the census are final and irrevocable, regardless of the possibility of an undercount or an overcount. Julia, can you take that?
Yeah, that is a very tricky question that I don't have a snappy answer for, unfortunately. We are all very focused on doing our best to get the most complete count possible to avoid having to think about any sort of adjustment or redo of the census. There's still time to get out the count, and also people are thinking about and talking about what kinds of work in processing the data that the Bureau has collected can help make sure that it is accurate over the coming months. Putting out the forms and doing the phone interviews and collecting responses online is a very important part of the census, but then there is additional work on the back end that the Bureau needs to do to go through that data, resolve any concerns with data quality, resolve any discrepancies, and check to see that it is complete before they finalize the data and put it out there for redistricting and other uses. So while that process is still going on, no one's ready to say whether it's whether there are so many deficiencies in the census that we then need to look at other options.
You know, Petra, if I can also add in there, Julia, I think that it's important to also say that yes, it can be, you know, litigated due to the changing deadlines and analysis and everything that Julia mentioned. But it's also very important to mention that there hasn't been a situation like this in history. We haven't had a pandemic. We haven't had these massive fires. We haven't had air quality issues. We haven't had changing deadlines at the 11th hour. So we are also, you know, under a situation that we have never been under. And so I think that all of that coupled together, it is history. And so I don't know that there's this playbook answer, but I think we are making history. I will tell you that. This is what's happening today, and what is happening in the upcoming leading up to today is historic. And that's why it's so historic that our votes, our count, and everything that we're doing as a society, as residents of this county, will be life-changing, will be historic, and it will, you know, be something that will impact our future.
And I have to agree. I tell my children, I'm like, this is history. It's happening right now. We're going to be remembering this. This is not actually normal that so much is happening.
We will be considered primary sources.
Yes, exactly. Emma, could you talk to us a little bit about what the homeless count is like? Because I think there are a lot of people who wonder how we make sure that we have an accurate count of our homeless population, especially when it is a growing and relatively hidden issue. So how does that function?
Great question. It actually happened, the enumeration count for our sheltered and unsheltered was started last night at 6 p.m. with the U.S. Census Bureau through 6 a.m. today. In working with the Census Bureau, we provided, and we've been working with them for now well over a year on determining locations of our unsheltered as well as sheltered locations. And so at this point, we are unable to go out with them as much as we wanted to and offered and wanted to be their escort, as well as our nonprofits would escort them to some of our unsheltered locations and sheltered. We, due to the Census Bureau and the sensitivity of data and confidentiality, we at this point only know and provide the locations. They do the enumeration count and then record it. And we won't know at the end either which sites were successful and were not, but we are monitoring it very closely. We're monitoring it through our community-based organizations, our sites, as well as inside our sources, so that we could, one, confirm and verify if in fact the enumeration did count, if they were counted. because we have heard some conflicting stories, unfortunately. And so we look forward to our validating that with our sources. This entire process and leading up to it we've had a number of conflicting stories, whether information from inside of the Bureau, as well as, our field operations supervisors and enumerators, which is troubling because we have put so much work on and to support and to ensure that we have the most accurate count possible to our county. But again, we are monitoring it very closely and working with our agencies to ensure that. And so we'll follow up. And again, back to what Julia mentioned, we are keeping track and record of every single thing. And like San Mateo County is part of the litigation who did file suit to say that this wasn't our concerns and changing the deadline. So we are part of that litigation because it is so important to us.
Thank you. And there was a question about the census data being anonymous. Can you expand on that a bit?
In our county, it continues to be, in every county, it's confidential and anonymous. And I think Julia mentioned under the Title 13, in our county, we only have 2 people that have access to any of the data. And I'm one who I've never seen any of it. And then we have our GIS specialist and management analyst, Megan Gosh. And we secure the data. Everything is crypted, where in fact, it can't get connected to any network. There's so many firewalls in there, and it really because of the integrity and the confidentiality that we hold so tightly, not only from the Bureau, but that is under, as Julia mentioned, there's so many safeguards, protocols, and consequences that could come with that. And so we don't get any information, we don't share any information, and so everything really does remain confidential. And even at the point that we only know something as simple as we know our response rate. As you may know, San Mateo County is leading the census response rate for the state of California. We're at nearly 78%, at a 78% response rate. But we don't know exactly, if we go down to the census tract, we know the response rate by census tract, but we will never know which houses completed it. To that level, we could never get that level of information. That is confidential as well.
Thank you. There's another question, are people living abroad counted?
We have to do a census count of where somebody is living as of April 1st. So where they're living on April 1st is where the census will be counted. That person will be counted of where they live on that day, at that point in time.
Great. So I want to give you all a couple of minutes to kind of have closing remarks, and then we will continue with questions if we get some more. So Miriam, do you want to start?
2020 has presented so many challenges to all of us, and the work that I'm doing at Nuestra Casa is giving the community strength. Our community members are persevering despite the fact that many of them lost their jobs due to the pandemic, due to the fact that they are living and sharing spaces with 2 to 3 different family members. And what continues to give me hope and esperanza is our youth in the community. Throughout our census work at Nuestra Casa, we have worked with youth through our Promotora program, through our food distribution program, and they're leading the way. And this is a collective effort that takes the community, and it's also a family effort. I specifically had family members, my brother and my cousins who live in East Palo Alto, and our college students supporting us with census work. And I would also have to say that Nuestra Casa is a nonpartisan organization, and we do not endorse any candidates. However, at the city council level, we do have 2 new candidates who are running for election, and they are under 30 years old. So the youth continues to inspire me, the community, and we're very excited about what we can do together collectively moving forward.
Thank you. Julia?
Yeah, thank you. It has been and continues to be such a difficult year, but I'd like to echo what Miriam said about looking for places where we can find hope. And there's a lot of great energy about the upcoming election. So I just wanted to share some encouragement for folks to really think creatively about what networks you can tap into to help be a community ambassador for the upcoming election. I know there's great infrastructure through Thrive and other organizations to help make sure you have information you need to share out with like your friends, your family, but also other networks, maybe parents at your children's school, maybe a church or other place of faith, maybe a social club that you're involved in. There are a lot of people who we can reach directly to make sure that they know how to vote safely in the upcoming election. And there is a lot of conversation about national politics, but the local races are also great opportunities for people to have a strong impact on what's going on in their communities. And so bringing up those conversations, talking to people about what propositions are on the ballot, there are a lot of ways that you can have an effect just in your kind of immediate world. And so we're really glad you're all here today and care about these issues, and hope that you can carry that forward in the next 5 weeks leading up to Election Day to, you know, continue the engagement and spread it even further.
Thank you. Emma?
Yeah, thank you. I echo my panelists, you know, my co-panelists here today. And I think back right now, and what I'm inspired about are conversations that are happening right now. These type of conversations that we're having the platform to have these difficult conversations and really educate and empower our community, because everybody's looking for a voice and wants to be a part of the change. And I think each one of us take a responsibility, take a role, as we can be part of the change. Let's be an active part of that change. And it starts by, you know, completing the census. It starts by being a part of and voting, or educating our youth in the process. You know, protecting the census is even more important today than ever. When it comes to the Constitution, it's very clear. Every person, regardless of immigration status, counts. Everyone counts. Todos cuentan. And it really just, and that is the bottom line that I would like to leave today is we are committed as a county to continue this effort, and we're committed to working with our trusted community partners to increase the outreach among the communities, to ensure dissemination of accurate information about the census, and to maximize participation where possible. We are committed to protecting the rights of every resident of San Mateo County through this process and other civic engagement processes. So thank you again for inviting for me to be a part of this, and again for the inspiration and the empowerment that I leave today inspired by hearing all the creativity and the future that it will come. And again, let's all be part of that change. I think every single one of us, by being here today in these conversations, we are being part of the change.
So I want to thank all 3 of you for being here, and really for kind of bringing us around to the inspiring part, which is we have an opportunity. Let's take it. Let's be counted. Let's vote. Let's have as much forward movement that we can, that we take from this really challenging moment. As far as just specific actions people can take, obviously filling out the census and voting, that's easy. let people know that there's a ton of information at the website for smcvote.org. And we will be sending out to all of the participants in this a whole lot of resources. So we'll be sending out links to the Asian Americans Advancing Justice, to their Know Your Rights flyers in different languages. We'll be sending out the one-pager that looks a lot like the slide I showed you, which you can take and disseminate and give to whoever you want. Thrive is also continuing with their voter education. We have voter outreach partners. If you're interested, you can contact me. In addition to that, we are co-hosting with the League of Women Voters Ballot Pros and Cons on October 6th. Everybody's welcome to that. I believe the library is also hosting some of those. There are also a huge number of candidate forums because we have a lot of different elections coming up, and you can find all of those listed on Thrive's website, as well as you can probably just Google for whatever city you're in. But use us as a resource. If anybody has more questions and wants to reach out to me or to any of the panelists, my email is petra@thrivealliance.org, pretty easy. And I really think that we have such a fabulous county where we have the Office of Community Affairs, who's very strongly involved in making sure that the whole community is counted by partnering with organizations, but also that the library system wants to do this. Like, they would like to be, they are a part also of our community. And many of us really love libraries and love books, and the fact that they're using that platform to be part of the civic participation kind of call to action is just heartwarming. And we are so lucky to live in this county and to live in a place where these are priorities. So thank you all. We have a couple more questions, I think, that have come in, but actually I don't see it on our question and answer. So, but I do see that Nicole put in the links so that you can sign up to their pros and cons, and I will put in the link to our website. And thank you so much all for coming. Nicole, do you have any closing words?
I just want to thank the panel. This has been fantastic. It makes me feel so much calmer. I feel like I'm known for not feeling calm about this election, and I just I'm just very heartened that we have such a strong community effort to make this election and the census one that is accessible for everyone in the county, and all these efforts to reach out to the community and help us get our questions answered. Petra, you mentioned the library. We are this is a priority for us as well. Our libraries are closed right now, as you may or may not know, but we offer a curbside service. So we have election materials at all of our curbside locations now through the election. We've had some voter registration on Tuesday, National Voter Registration Day. We are going to have some materials from the Elections Division that we will distribute in our curbside bags. And then we have these two, working with the League of Women Voters for these two, and maybe we'll add a couple of additional sessions, we'll see, but the pro-con ballot measure presentations. So there's so much out there for those of us who are trying to do our part and are trying to make sense of, I don't know, just one thing on top of the other, right? But we find a way through. With the help of all of you. So thank you so much to our panel, and thank you, Petra, for leading this discussion.
Thank you, and feel free to reach out to us. I put my email and our website address in the chat box. Feel free to email if we haven't answered all of your questions on the chat. And thank you all for coming, and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.